shall be done. Now, here's the story we got. We talked last week, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but it was recently, about the fact that the movers and shakers in the Republican Party, the elite of the neocon apparatus, are pretty much pooling their money together in the support of three candidates. Those three candidates for the next Republican nomination for President of the United States are, in no particular order, Jeb Bush, Mitt Romney for the third time, and Chris Christie of New Jersey. I found a great article this week written by Hunter Wallace, who was at our 10-year anniversary party. He is the editor of Occidental Dissent website, and he writes that the oligarchs are gathering to keep the GOP kosher. I'm going to read it very quickly. It's just a short 3-paragraph treat, and then I'm going to toss it over to Keith for comment. He writes that this Politico article that he found is a great example of why he doesn't believe in Jewish conspiracy theories. A conspiracy, he writes, is a secret plot to do something harmful. There is nothing at all secretive about how Jewish billionaires like Sheldon Adelson writes huge checks to corrupt the political process on behalf of their co-ethnics in Israel. The bribery is always done out in the open. Therefore, there is no conspiracy. Even though there is only one Jewish Republican in Congress and the GOP wins only 33% of the Jewish vote, Jews are 2% of the American population, every single Republican in Congress is slavishly pro-Israel because of that Jewish money. And, of course, Keith, we all see this despicable spectacle of the candidates each 4-year cycle going into Israel and worshiping the Wailing Wall and wearing the yarmulkes. I mean, it's just, ludicrous. This is the what Politico wrote, though. The Republican Jewish coalition, facing the loss of its leading champion and tensions within the GOP, is planning an aggressive push in 2015 to enforce the hawkish pro-Israel consensus it helped build within the party over the past 2 decades. Efforts to appeal to Jews may seem disproportionate to the size of the Jewish population, you think, which constitutes about 2%, but their influence transcends their numbers. Jews, Politico writes, are important in the electoral process both because of activism and because of their money. In fundraising and in bundling, they have influence beyond their numbers and even beyond their money. Now, that was a direct excerpt from Politico. So this is what's going on, Keith, behind the scenes in the Republican Party. And by the way, it should be added that if you went to GOP.com and looked at their most recent press releases, as I did, you will see that the Republican National Committee issued its usual statements that it celebrates Hanukkah, Yom Kippur, and Rosh Hashanah. However, if you went there expecting to find any announcement whatsoever pertaining to Christmas, you're going to be sorely mistaken. So 3 press releases. The GOP honoring Hanukkah, Yom Kippur, and Rosh Hashanah. This is at GOP.com, folks, the official Republican Party website. Not one press release related to Christmas.
What do they say, James? Money talks and BS walks, and everything except money is BS. This is the secret of Jewish power and influence. This is why PACs, political action committees, are almost exclusively a Jewish invention, why the phenomenon of bundling comes almost exclusively from the West Coast and also from the Northeast. And bundling means that you can't track the money. So that's another great Jewish invention. But we know where the money comes from. 75% of the money raised to support the campaigns of national candidates, that would be for the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, or for president, in the Democratic Party come from Jewish interests. Over 40% of the money used to finance Republican candidates for national office, again, the House of Representatives, the U.S. Senate, and president, again, come from the same group, which is only 1.7% of the United States population. They are over 1/3, Jews are over 1/3 of the Forbes 400 richest Americans, undoubtedly, based on last names. Secondly, they are over 1/3 of the student population of the most elite colleges and universities in America, places like Harvard, Yale, and Stanford. This type of, and quite frankly, if you're going to have a big job in any national governmental technocratic position, like being a foreign policy advisor, you have to go to one of those schools, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, maybe University of Chicago, a few more, that have this overwhelmingly Jewish student body, at least compared to their numbers in the general population. And even then, almost all of these people, people like Paul Wolfowitz, Douglas Feith, Richard Pearl, are of Jewish descent. The reason they don't have to hide is because with their complete, almost utter and complete media control, nothing ever gets mentioned. Nobody ever connects the dots between these names, for example, and the fact they're Jewish. If you do, you're going to be roundly denounced as being anti-Semitic. And most people are kept in the dark and unfortunately are so incurious that if it were not for outlets like the political cesspool, nobody would ever mention the fact that almost all of these movers and shakers in the national government are Jewish, James.
Well, that's absolutely right. And again, do we have a problem with them? Are we so rabidly anti-Semitic because they're Jewish and we just hate them because they're Jews? I mean, obviously that's just preposterous. I mean, that's not the fact. We have a problem ideologically speaking, which is the problem we have throughout politics. We are ideologically motivated, and certainly we're motivated to help our family.
We're conservative. We're unabashedly and unashamedly and unapologetically conservative here at the political cesspool. And anyone who is not conservative, in fact, has set themselves out, like liberals have, to be the enemies of conservatism, well, they are the ones that have made us the enemy. We're not the one that have made them the enemy.
And I maintain, you're right, Keith, and I've been debating this with friends in recent weeks as well. I consider myself to be an authentic conservative, and I think you now have to draw a distinction between
authentic and inauthentic.
Right, and that is paleo-conservative versus neo-conservative, which is a Jewish-led conservatism. But listen, I think we would have been very mainstream back, certainly 100 years ago, but even as recently as 40 or 50 years ago. What we would have talked about would have just been common sense, and no one would have raised an eyebrow about it. Now, we are conservatives, but yes, now, I said a lot of what we do, and certainly the vast majority of it, is ideologically motivated, but that, it should also be clearly stated that we are explicitly pro-white, in that we champion our family first and our culture first and our faith,
and we
Christianity
do this by
first.
default. This is a default position because no one else wants to, wave that banner. We've got to do that because no one else. We're doing the job that other Americans don't want to do, as they say. Now we're getting back to the three main Republican candidates as they are developing in the early part of the primary season.
And before you get into that, I was just going to say, and this is one of the great problems we have, or disagreements rather, with Jews. I mean, of course, an anti-Semite is anyone who disagrees with a Jew, but our problems with those Jews, particularly the ones in control of our media and our government and academia and now the churches even, is that they are so rabidly anti-Christian and anti-conservative. They are liberal, but and listen, we've had quite a few Jews on this program. At least a half a dozen, and that's not a lot, but we've had a half a dozen very prominent Jews, professors that Paul Gottfried, for instance. Listen, if they are with us on the issues, then I'm with them, and vice versa. And for the blacks out there that are with us on the issues, but how many of them are there? Well, not a lot, not as many as I'd like to see. But listen, anybody who won't stand in the way of me standing up and protecting my cultural heritage and wanting to have, to be able to live in a place that mirrors my culture, I wish everyone else could have that as well, then, I can work with them.
Well, it's not like we're a minority viewpoint. It was our ancestors that founded this nation, that developed the institutions of our government, of our civilization, and any transformation, any departure from that heritage, and that inevitably leads to devolution of the civilization and culture. If you don't think that we have gone downhill, for example, over the last 70 years as a nation and as a culture, you just haven't been paying attention, James.
Well, that's right. And then, there's a reason we have had that
Well, look at the illegitimacy rate, for example, in 1950 versus today.
Well, there's a reason we've been going down in that declining path, and a lot of it has been because of the media and those who control it, and we know who controls
liberalism, which is caused by Jewish power and influence.